So Weisser Distributing was started here in Sioux Falls in 1978 by Eric's dad, Bob. Eric joined the team in 2010, was it, right? Yeah. Eric joined the team in 2010. And since then, they've gone from selling auto parts locally to selling globally and expanding their product lists. So Eric's going to join me today. We're going to have just a quick Q&A about kind of Weisser Distributing and what they're up to. So I'll hand this to you. I'll turn on my other mic, and I'll start asking you a bunch of questions.
Sounds good. I don't know if do I have to turn this microphone on, Jeff, or am I good to go? Sounds good. Jeff Pickett's up there, everybody.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, big thanks to Jeff and Bobby for doing all the video and audio work today. So Eric, when I kind of started researching this, one of the first things I did when I kind of looked at Weisser Distributing, poking around on your website, things like that, is I saw that company culture was a huge thing. And I do believe mentioned even kind of like the 7 core values, things like that. Where did that kind of company culture cultivate from? And secondly, how have you been able to kind of maintain it throughout at Weisser?
That's a fun question. And I thought about this long and hard, but it started at the very beginning. My mom told my dad one day, "It's time for you to retire, slow down." My dad said, "Uh-oh, this is a tough decision." So he called me up and he said, "Would you be interested in taking over this business? It's a one-person business." I knew a lot about it. The short story was it had about $200,000 in EBITDA, so it's a legit one-person company. And at the time, I was a high school teacher, and it would have been just foolish for me to say, "Nah, I don't think so." So I agreed to come back, and tongue-in-cheek, and my mom's here somewhere, she told my dad, "Now there's one rule that I have: don't let this business ruin Eric's life like it ruined our life." Now, the story behind that is he was working like 80 hours a week, and they never got to take like week-long vacations like everybody else that worked at Wells Fargo or Sanford, all the people that have perfect lives. And so that's where we started this, was like, we're not just gonna work our tails off, we're gonna do this the right way. And that's when we hired our first employee. Like, we asked them questions like, what do you need from us? It's not, what do we need from you? And so it was a mutual understanding of, we're not gonna work 80 hours a week. We're gonna do things the smart way. And so my dad's 80-hour week work weeks together ended up being like 30-hour weeks at the very beginning. And so we're both entrepreneurial. Says, well, what else can we do here? So the rest is a little history. As they say, we started selling some things online.
Yeah, cool, awesome. So I think another thing that's pretty great about this is that, when we think about sometimes the Midwest or maybe small businesses, we think about a family-owned business, kind of, is this going to be something where somebody steps in and takes over the company that I built with my bare hands, or do I have a family member? So that's kind of a unique thing in that, Bob started this in '78, worked at it for a long time. We were talking last night about working out of the garage, having helpers, all that kind of stuff. So what did that look like for you as far as kind of that transition and communication and how that was successful from going from Bob being there 80 hours a week to now probably you being there 80 hours a week?
Right. So we made just a little agreement. It was a napkin agreement. He said, make a budget. He's big on budgets. I sort of made a budget. And at the end of it, he said, you can write your own salary, but whatever you pay yourself for the next 5 years, you're going to pay me for the next 5 years. And after 10 years, you can have the company. Well, a lot has changed since then, but there was just a common understanding of we're gonna be nice to each other. The business had nice EBITDA, but it wasn't really worth anything. So we didn't have to worry about shares and things like that. Now, a couple years in, now all of a sudden we had to get a lawyer involved and trusts involved, and my sister came in the business, and we had to gift some shares to make sure that this company wasn't going to go under later on. So it was really I have to give my parents a lot of credit here. They each own 50% of the company, which works out really nicely for gifting for young entrepreneurs who have spouses. Having a 50-50 company is really good if you end up going the micro-comp way of not raising funding and just wanting to pass something on. So we were very fortunate that way. And now here we are 8 years later. The napkin deal is done, but we're still going strong. And my dad still is in the company. They still have 20% of the company, and so they're definitely involved and interested in what we're doing.
Awesome, awesome. So another thing that I think impacts pretty much anybody in the room that is either a current entrepreneur or is looking to become an entrepreneur is scaling a company. So that obviously is another thing here that's a great kind of success story is, Bob being in Sioux Falls, probably having a pretty consistent customer base, but obviously limited on being able to raise revenue, find those next ones. So, for you coming in 2010, what did that kind of look like? What were maybe some immediate challenges that stick out, those fun horror stories of growing, and kind of what did that look like for you in getting the business online and really kind of making things grow?
Yeah, so small company, and with lots of challenges that small companies have, but the one thing that he did really, really, really well, and I think it started from his dad, his books were immaculate. The profits weren't always there, the sales weren't there, you always wanted to make a little bit more money, but the books were really, really, really solid. And so we had that foundation, which allowed us, he had a small line of credit from US Bank. And as we grew, we were like, well, we've been with US Bank for 33 years. Like, they're going to grow. They're a giant bank. They're going to grow with us. And at some point, we wanted to get a line of credit up to maybe $250,000 or $500,000, and they had to bring in another VP. And that VP looks at everything. He says, wow, you guys don't have any term debt. Like, this is fantastic. Can't wait to work with you guys. And so we brought in a consultant named Mike Ritter to help us through this. Mike Ritter's a CFO consultant, and the bankers came back and we wanted to renegotiate some terms. We've been customers for a long time, and they said no. And
Oops.
Now what? And I was just thinking about a story when must have been 10 years old. I went to US Bank that we've been with forever with my dad. My mom must have been busy or something, and my dad said, all right, we're going to go and sit in the hot seat. All right, Dad, what's a hot seat? Well, evidently that's sitting in front of a banker.
Any bankers in here?
And so that's what I knew was US Bank was our partner. You will cower in front of your banker and accept whatever they will give you. Well, Mike Ritter told us, well, that's not the only way. We can interview a couple other bankers. So we interviewed some other bankers. They looked at this, our books, which were really, really good. It wasn't a giant company, but the books were good. And we ended up switching banks, getting more favorable terms. Basically, in my opinion, is we had no term debt. And we had accurate financials. And so that bank loan allowed us to scale and buy more inventory. And if you're selling anything online, inventory is really, really important, and people want their product right away. Mm-hmm. So if you have it in stock, you can grow. And Amazon, loves it when you have inventory in stock.
Definitely, yeah. So I just realized I forgot to write this down, which is great. But kind of a segue into that is, online it talks about kind of the system that you've used for organization. I think it's your CRM tool possibly that's basically helped you with the kind of how the company's been able to grow as far as the structure. So certainly the debt is a big help, but as far as the actual structure of the company, communication team-wide, what did that look like in being able to kind of keep things moving forward? Because certainly when you grow a company really fast, it takes lots of really good communication and lots of consistent communication.
So when I came on in 2010, we had a truck and we traveled around and we would sell automotive supplies to lots of different companies, and we would handwrite invoices. And at the bottom of an invoice in the automotive world, some things are taxable, some things are not. We would use a calculator. It was a mess. And so I said, all right, let's bring some technology. And so we had QuickBooks as our back-end software, and we used QuickBooks for too long. And the problem was we didn't have very good data to help us scale. And so when we looked at different CRMs, and in our world, the ERP is the key. And so we started looking at different companies, and we knew we had to put a ton of data work in on the back end to just clean up 33 years of no data, pen and paper type data. And so we just said, no, we're not going to do that. We're really like growing this company. And that, I don't want to say it got us in trouble, but at the end of the day, we had to put in hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade QuickBooks to something called NetSuite. It's an Oracle company now, but lots of giant billion-dollar companies use NetSuite. It's been fantastic, but it cost us a lot of money to make that happen. If I could rewind for my dad, we could have done a lot of things differently in the 80s and 90s to make that change better. And so that's what powers everything that we do now. And that's going to allow us to scale 10x from where we're at now.
Awesome. So something that stuck out to me when we were chatting last night, lots of people talk about being located in the Midwest. Sometimes it can be a disadvantage or an advantage. John Meyer at Lemonly talks about how South Dakota is their advantage. You kind of had some great things you said last night about, the company's grown, have facilities in Nevada, but, for you keeping it here, kind of what was that all about, and kind of, why is South Dakota an advantage for Weisser Distributing?
Well, first of all, the headquarters were at my dad's garage at 925 Kennedy Avenue. So that was, we needed to stay there for a while. He once told me, our first employee said, we got to get out of this garage, get into a warehouse with proper facilities. And he said, well, what else would you want in a facility? We have couches, beds, nice toilet paper, Doritos, whatever you want right here at home.
Doritos.
So we stayed there one employee too long. We had 4.5 employees working out of my dad's house. And finally, this is the Midwestern values. The thing that moved us was not like scalability or convenience. It was, we had 2 semi-trucks parked on Kennedy Avenue at 2 PM, and he was worried what the neighbors would think. So we moved, and that was a giant move for us. But e-commerce wise, and what South Dakota does for us, this is a big secret. Everybody knows Midwestern work ethic, and everybody knows the integrity that people from the Midwest have. But in e-commerce, basically, we're a shipping company. And so Amazon has 65 or 70 warehouses all over the country, and they use that to their advantage. They want to get product to you in 1 or 2 hours, really. We fill the gap of the people that are willing to wait a day or two. And when you're in the middle of the country, we can ship to both coasts, relatively inexpensive, in 2 days. And the shipping lanes that UPS and FedEx want to fill, they like this because they're driving through South Dakota without packages a lot of times. And so we get to fill some of those trucks with packages. It's been really, really good. And we had to move to Nevada. One of our warehouses, it just made economic sense the story I tell people is Nevada is closer to China than Sioux Falls is. And so we opened a warehouse in Nevada, and things are a lot different there, believe it or not. When you hire employees from South Dakota, you hear, well, where'd you grow up? And Mr. Webb's out there, he's from Yankton. And the people are from Scotland, from Freeman, all the towns we know. The first time I asked this question from one of our Las Vegas workers, well, I'm from Compton. And so is he. Like Dr. Dre's songs? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Compton. And these guys are awesome. Same core values. We hired them the same way. I'd have beers with Mr. Webb. I'd have beers with the guys from Compton for sure, but they just operate a little bit differently. And that's okay. We're working our way through that, but it's just a little bit different out there.
Yeah. No, that's a great point geographically. I mean, when you talk about being from Freeman or being from Gregory, that's not that far away. There's a good chance they probably played each other in high school football or volleyball, and so those connections are kind of unique. Switching kind of more to yourself, having been in business now for a while and seen some things, being more active kind of in the entrepreneurial community. Where did that start for you as far as connecting with startups and kind of being that person in the community that's willing to kind of be a mentor, be a funder, things like that?
Sure. So selfishly is how that started. In South Dakota, there's plenty of talented people, but attracting them to a company at 925 Kennedy Avenue is not super easy. It's not. And then attracting them to T. We were in the industrial park in T, gravel parking lot, muddy, dirty, packed to the gills with people and with product. With QuickBooks as our basis. So just being in the community and letting people know, hey, we're doing cool things. Our company's a fun company. We're selling on Amazon. We don't have to worry about Amazon. I won't say we are Amazon, but we're there. And so when kids were graduating, we wanted to let them know, working at Sanford or working at Wells Fargo is awesome for mom and dad, but for you personally, is that where you want to be? Probably not. Let's talk, and if it's a good fit, come on board.
Right. So based off of maybe how many people in the room, this might be dangerous, but we have time for a couple questions from the audience. If there's anybody that has a question for Eric about Weisser Distributing, kind of his past, anything along those lines? Maybe Mr. Webb has a question?
He knows it all already.
He does?
My question is, what was your background before you started doing this, and how did you make the transition? Yeah, so I was a high school business teacher. But the background for e-commerce, when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, I was buying and selling baseball cards on eBay. So I really understood when you sell online, you have to understand what does the product cost, what are the eBay or Amazon fees, and how much does it cost to ship the item. And so when you're selling baseball cards at 14, there's no risk really. It's just a piece of cardboard. It's not worth anything. But that was my background. Was I got fairly large selling baseball cards, also selling Beanie Babies, things like that.
You guys laugh, but I actually do that in my free time right now. I'm not even kidding. That's awesome. Well, I wish we had some more time because I'd ask you to tell some funny stories about Matt Paulson. But unfortunately, we're out of time. So thank you for your time today, ladies and gentlemen. Please help me welcome Eric Weisser for his time. Thanks. That's awesome.